It's the moment that at least some of you have been waiting for, the return to the food forest. I'm Greg Walgast. This is now our second year with this food forest. It's time for an update. I have a lot to cover. I'd like to give you a little bit of a tour and show you the things that we planted last year that are now coming back, along with the new species that will be moving out here very soon. I'd also like to show you some of the things that are working and the things that aren't working so well. So stick around and we'll see if we can learn a thing or two. So I know that a lot of you who have subscribed to the channel in the last year have seen my initial design video where I was talking about the layout here and what we wanted to grow. If you haven't seen that, you can check out the link in the corner or down below. But you can see that the layout turned out pretty much the way I wanted it to. As far as what's growing in here, we shifted things around a little bit. For the most part, we've gotten all of the stuff that we wanted to, and we have a lot more that's going to come in here as well. But the physical layout is working really well. I'm glad I took some time to think about how we wanted to move through this space and be able to access everything easily and come in from all different sides. And it's working really well. It's really comfortable. It's a pleasure to come in here and check on things and harvest some herbs for using with dinner or whatever. So it's working really well. It still doesn't look like much at the moment, but I can't wait to see how it looks pretty soon when everything is in bloom. It's gonna be gorgeous. So the first thing we can talk about is our two peach trees. We've got dwarf varieties, Red Haven and in Alberta. They're looking great, starting to come back a bit more, getting some new growth. Before you go scolding me in the comments on a terrible pruning job, however, I will have to throw the local wildlife under the bus on that one. It's not my fault. They grew some nice long branches all through the summer last year. They're several feet tall. And then at some point in the fall, I came out here and found that they had just been chomped off. The branches were lying on the soil. So I'd hate to think that somebody just wandered into our backyard with a pair of scissors or a knife or something. I have to assume it was a raccoon or squirrels or rabbits or whatever. So now we've got the cages around them. Otherwise, I'm not giving them any support on the tree because I don't want to weaken them. They need to be able to strengthen themselves up against the wind on their own. But the cage is at least going to keep things from chomping away on them as they start growing more branches. We want to keep at least a few branches going into the next years and then maintain pruning after that as they get bigger. So they are doing very well. There are a few issues. One of them is with the Alberta and the way that the nursery had grafted the dwarf onto the rootstock, and it's coming off the side at an angle. I don't really like how that looks, and I don't know how well that's going to support itself as it gets bigger. Another thing is that once we planted them, the soil settled down quite a bit, and now they are both sitting in a bit of a depression. When it rains a lot, they sit in water, which is not good for the roots. The roots are not able to get enough oxygen for a while. And that may just be because of the type of soil that we have, and when we had to loosen it up as we dug the hole and then planted the trees, and then that wound up compacting the soil even more as it settled. So that, along with the fact that they are being shaded out still by our other silver maple tree, and they're not getting enough sunlight, it's leading me to consider possibly transplanting them. So we planted those peach trees in the spring last year when we still had two silver maple trees growing back here. And then later in the summer, we decided to take out this one because it was a risk to the area, and I'd made some videos about that. But this gives us an opportunity to possibly transplant those trees over to here because they would get more sunlight. This area around the stump is raised up a little bit, so the trees would be out of the water when it rains a lot. And an old tree stump is a great location for a new polyculture because the stump and all of the roots in the soil, as all of that is decomposing and recycling those nutrients into the soil, that can help feed a new system with the young trees and everything else that you want to grow around there. So that is something that I am still considering, and if we do that, we'll have to wait until the fall, because generally the fall is a better time to transplant trees or shrubs, because then the roots will have some energy to spread out and collect nutrients and store those nutrients over the winter as the rest of the plant above ground is going into dormancy. As far as everything else that we planted out here last year, we've got quite a few things coming back. We have a lot of comfrey. Some would say probably too much comfrey out here. You really have to be careful with this stuff. This particular species of it is sterile, so it won't spread by seed, but it is very easily spread by the root cuttings. That's how we planted all of these, and we have them in several strategic places around the food forest. But you have to be careful not to till around these and try to pull them all up, and if any of the little roots break off, you're going to get more plants growing there. So if you're trying to get rid of one, you break off all the roots, you're going to get 20 in its place. So definitely going to have to just be careful with that over the years. And we did not get any of these flowering last year, but you can see that this one is just starting to get some flower buds now. So before too long, these will all be flowering and attracting lots of bees and other pollinators to the garden. There's a massive clump of black-eyed Susans coming back here, and most of these things are coming back much stronger than they were last year. We've got some prairie blazing star in a few places here, and I really hope that gets going, because I would love to see that flower. We have a whole row of purple coneflower, or echinacea. We have wild bergamot, or bee balm, and we only had just a few of these growing last year, and they just spread all on their own. So there's quite a bit more that's coming out here. It's even popping out from the other side of the log, so that will be gorgeous to see all that and see what kind of wonderful pollinators that brings in. We have some Egyptian walking onions, and I am pretty sure, I mean, it's pretty obvious here that I must have spread around some of the little bulbils that come off the top. I know I spread some chives around here, but right now most of these look more like the walking onions that are coming up, and I hope that wasn't a mistake, because those really spread a lot, hence the name walking onions. They just grow all the bulbils on the top, drop those off, break apart, and they can spread everywhere. But well, we'll have a nice little patch of onions growing here at least. And we still have some herbs in a few places, like oregano and sage. And we just added some rosemary, and that is nearly impossible to grow from seeds, so I just went ahead and bought a plant. And we got some cilantro, which struggled a little bit at first, but seems to be doing better now. And same with the mint. I think it got a little cold out here for it, or it just didn't like the soil at first, but seems to be adjusting to that now. So we've got columbine and some rose milkweed, great blue lobelia, some New England aster, showy goldenrod, and some prairie smoke. That should be an interesting one. And of course we do also have the wild lupins and the butterfly weed. We're going to bring more of that out, and should be no surprise to any gardener. I'm sure there are going to be about a dozen other things that find their way in here too, so we'll see how that goes. And I almost forgot to mention, one of the most prominent new features of the food forest now is all of the log borders and log features and nurse logs and whatever you want to call some of this stuff in here. And I set this all up after we had cut down the tree and put the hugelkultur beds together, and we had some extra wood left over, and I decided to really try to, you know, spruce things up a bit more here. And I think it definitely brings it together a lot better, sets up the paths much more clearly, and it looks really nice when you see it more from above. Kind of wish I had a drone to start getting some footage of that, but I really like the look of it, and it's all natural, and this is much better for the ecosystem of the food forest and for the insects and the other critters that live here. And this of course will break down and feed the soil just like the wood chips do over time. And of course, then we'll have to replace some of these as they break down. Might be rather quickly that they decompose, since this is silver maple and it rots very quickly. But we'll see how long it lasts. And for now, it's looking great, and it's really establishing where the garden is. And I'm really, really happy with all that. So that's it for an update for now. And of course, I will be showing much more of this food forest over the summer. I can go into more detail in future videos and talk about watering and not watering and maintenance and the roles that these different species play as part of this whole polyculture and all that good stuff. And of course, once things start flowering and we get some pollinators coming to visit, I can get lots of glorious 4K footage of that. So that will be lovely to see. And otherwise, stay safe out there, and I'll see you next time.